It is happening in Maui. There have been mass evacuations. Some people have had to jump into the ocean to escape.
You're gonna be okay, Milo.
As fast as we can. But just so you know, 3%. That's what's been searched with the dogs, 3%.
There's been a deadly event on Maui. 100 people have lost their lives. What exactly that event was seems like it was a fire. I only say it this way just because there are conflicting narratives and very suspicious, let's say, elements to this story that afford us the opportunity to say, you know what, it is worth looking deeper into. So what I'm going to do with this news spot today is to bring you into a little bit of a conventional story, what happened on Maui starting on August 8th, just last Tuesday, with these wildfires, as they say. And I'm going to show you some of the alternative explanations. Some people are saying it was directed energy weapons. I don't personally think that's what it was, but I do want to go to a little bit of that story so you at least have the details that some people are talking about. But I want you to know that there are people from Maui that are speaking up saying that regardless of the event, the lives that are being claimed now and the death toll that is rising might not be from the fires themselves or the event, but it could be because the state is failing them. There are people with enough food, enough water, gas that can come in and get some of these people who are displaced and bring them somewhere safe. That is not being allowed to happen because of the state. Food cannot be brought in. Medication cannot be brought in. Gasoline cannot be brought in so people can't hop in their cars and go to a different spot on the island. People who have resources but not tangibly in their hands just a few miles away are not able to access those resources. So the problem here is also a failure of the state. And I have to show you that I do not believe that the Hawaiian kingdom is actually legally a part of the United States. But we pretend that it is one of the 50 states. And here's what the United States president had to say when he was asked to comment on the lives that are lost in Maui just last week, the American lives that were lost in Maui.
Mr. President, any comments on the rising death toll in Maui?
Will you come talk about the Hawaii response, Mr. President?
Nothing there.
I'm not taking pot shots at the president. I usually don't talk trash on a sitting president or many politicians these days. But I do want to say that for a president to say no comment, it's not like he was so busy that he needed to race away from the question and not even hear it. He stopped to hear what the question was and then decided, no comment. That is not a U.S. president move. I'm sorry. I'm not here to bash anyone in politics, but I will say that that is not a leader that I would choose to have representing one of the 50 states that he just walked out on with no comment, even though this is, to many people, the deadliest, most extreme event that has happened in the Hawaiian Islands on record.
What we saw was likely the largest natural disaster in Hawaii's state history.
Local officials say no one could have predicted the massive wildfires that struck West Maui this week, fanned by strong winds as Hurricane Dora passed just south of the islands.
So as you see, CBS News, AP, and Democracy Now! Are all saying that climate change is to blame.
So you have dry vegetation, that is, when there's a spark, it's easier for that vegetation to ignite and for the wildfire to spread. Climate change in many parts of the world is increasing vegetation dryness, in large part because temperatures are hotter.
Fires that spread through Maui came after weeks of worsening drought conditions as the climate emergency fuels deadly fires.
Those of us who live here know that we are prone to wildfire. We have all the conditions that support wildfire: dry vegetation, heavy winds, more and more drought episodes, and lots of vegetation on the ground that's fire prone and unmanaged. And I think there's a lot that needs to happen. We need to manage our fuels better. We have a lot of fallow agricultural lands.
Invasive species of grasses that are keeping humidity levels down, meaning it's now more of a risk because it's drier there on the Hawaiian Islands for wildfires to break out. That these invasive species are one big part of it is not really to do with climate change as much as it is to do with tourism. even though people who are deeply into the narrative of climate change would say that tourism is a part of it, because our fossil fuels are getting us around the world and we are deranging the ecosystem more. This can play into Agenda 21, but what I want to say is that I don't mind that. I agree that climate can change because invasive species can get into other climates and augment the climate over time. There are a lot of people who are saying, no, it's just these three-letter organizations, or it's just the government that's using these directed energy weapons, or they're seeding the clouds and they're changing weather patterns. We know the technology goes back all the way to Vietnam and even beyond that. That's true, this technology does seem to exist, but we can't say that we know for a fact that those technologies were employed specifically here. I do want to say that besides the climate change idea, there is a hurricane that was brewing 800 miles away that sucked some of the humidity out as well. Could also be a confluence of factors that lowered the humidity levels in the Hawaiian Islands, and that's why this fire was raging.
Why is Lahaina significant? It was once the capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii, prior to the forced U.S. annexation and the eventual move to Honolulu. Lahaina is filled with native property and business owners that have dug their heels in and have refused to sell their properties to conglomerates such as BlackRock, Vanguard, and Oprah. Unglobalized prime oceanfront property still owned and managed by the natives. So what caused this destruction? Short answer, no one knows. All government agencies, local and federal, have vehemently stated that it is unknown. However, there are two competing theories online. 1. Environmental. The perfect combination of a major hurricane 200 miles off the southern shore of Maui, combined with northern pressure to create massive dryness and winds. Or 2. Diabolical. Something the conspiracy theorists call a DEW, direct energy weapon.
Hear me out. You don't see what's going on. I feel something is bigger. I've been on Maui the last 9 years, and I know the geographical location and how everything works. There was no fucking way that a hurricane missed Big Island, went to Maui, and didn't flood them, didn't give them, crazy, other things, but it caused fires. It caused fires, and not only on Maui, but it caused fires in the most precious parts of real estate in Maui. Lahaina Front Street is worth billions. The Hawaiians that have been holding out and the Kanaka have been holding out for years, not wanting to sell their property in Lahaina due to these big $1 million companies. It is not a coincidence, I don't believe, how in the most precious parts of Maui, Kula, Lahaina, and Kihei, that the locals that are standing strong and do not want to give up Oprah Winfrey's fucking view up in Kula that the Hawaiians are holding out on, that the fire was going to.
So now the next thing is we need to really look at Agenda 21. Let's take a look at the map. Here is a map of Maui. You can see where the fires are. Here is the map of Agenda 21, or let's say the Sustainable Development Goals that have been put in place in 2014. This map is from a document in 2014 that was published saying that this island of Maui and these regions, as you can tell, these are also, let me be fair, the more inhabited regions of Maui. So where else would a smart city go but the inhabited regions? That's right where the fires were. Is that enough to say there's a causal link? No, absolutely not. But I do want to show you that this isn't the only region where fires have raged or where infrastructure has been destroyed where Agenda 21 wants to go into. And it's not enough evidence, but I am going to show you some TikTok videos of people just very succinctly breaking it down that where the infrastructure was damaged the most, that is exactly the places where smart cities have been slated to be built up.
So today we're going to give a little update on the Hawaiian fires. Now I want you to look at this footage, and this sure doesn't look like a fire to me. It looks like something almost exploded or something went off. Now, what's interesting is certain things are still standing while other things are not. Now, the governor did say this is climate change doing this. Interesting. What they don't talk about is in January how they had in Maui a smart city conference to turn Maui into an entire smart island, changing everything to electric, renewables, solar panels, and pushing everybody into electric vehicles. 15-minute smart cities. So now what's also interesting is next month in September, Hawaii is hosting the Digital Government Summit utilizing AI to govern the island.
What we really need to take from these maps is just a memory, just keep a snapshot, a memory of the fact that these fires that seem to be catastrophic, always blaming climate change, is very convenient for the narrative of climate change, because the narrative of climate change seems to be lockstep with Agenda 21. What do we need to do? Look at all these terrible ways that we've built up infrastructure. When we level it, we can build up the smart grid, meaning make it more into a device. You make the buildings and the cities themselves into a device, so even if somebody throws away their phone and they don't want to be tracked by it anymore, your facial recognition and speech recognition patterns can be picked up by the device that you are living in. That is what a smart city is. I've been following this since 2007. It's something that you really have to spend some time looking at all the evidence to see that this has been moving into HOAs. This has been moving into housing development and urban development planning for decades. So now let's switch gears and actually take a look at some footage from Maui of the damaged sites.
I'm compiling footage. Lots of footage is getting deleted. Pictures are getting deleted.
On this pier today.
So as we go through this, watch for the melted rims, melted glass, missing door handles, melted engine blocks, and notice that there is no foliage around these cars to burn. The heat did not get to the cars through the burning bushes next to them because there were none. The only other thing the normie would say is that it was the embers that blew in the wind. I'm not going to try and explain plasma fire to a newcomer. Missing gas cap cover, melted rims, melted engine blocks. Missing glass, not a single piece of glass in any of the cars. All of them burnt equally. There are none that are half burned, or a quarter burned, or three-quarter burned. They're all burnt 100%. They all look identical. They have the rust color. Paint burned all the way off each and every one of them. But there's no trees or bushes around any of them to cause them to catch fire. Door, the entire door on this is missing. We've seen that before. That's not the first time. Fire doesn't burn a whole door and then leave the rest of the car. Electricity-based plasma fire does that. They're all burned completely, left with that white ash color. None of them have any black charcoal on them, and they all have their door handles missing. Here, you see that all the houses are burned to the ground and the trees in between are still standing. And the houses, just like the cars, are burned identically, 100% to a white powder ash. None of them have black charcoal, half-burned furniture, or a half-burned house, or a quarter-burned, or three-quarter burned. They're all 100%, and they look identical to the one on either side of them. Fire doesn't burn that consistently.
Cars abandoned, everything burnt. Looks like it got bombed. It really does.
As a plasma fire. Normies, when there's a tree burning on the inside like this, will say, well, lightning does that. That's what makes a tree burn on the inside is lightning. So the fire, the wildfire burned all the other trees, but this one lit up like lightning by lightning. Guaranteed there's many other trees around there that are hollow on the inside where they burned, just like this one.
Everything that I just showed you right there from Maui, I'm going to return to a gentleman later on who has been studying fires for over 40 years, and he will show you that in California there are a lot of images that look exactly the same. So the idea that you can see trees around that weren't burnt, the perfect fuel for a forest fire was not burnt, while houses were incinerated and turned to white ash. Remember that. That's a very important point. That the rims were burnt, that all of the door handles were burnt off, that all the cars and the paint was charred off consistently across all the cars, that embers flying in the wind caused for all those cars to catch fire, but did not do the same for trees in the area. Makes very little sense. With that, again, I'm not going to tell you that I know for sure. I'm just internet informed on this. I am trying to do my best to stay balanced because I believe that's the best way that I can come to a semblance idea of what's happening here. And by the end of this, I'll give you my opinion on what I think, even if it wasn't the cause of this, is going to be the solution of it coming from the state side of it. But before we go there, I want to show you trees with very interesting burning patterns. Look at this.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. This is 7 years ago in Santa Rosa. I saw this picture on my computer screen. And first thing I saw is trees up and down every street and between houses in Santa Rosa, California, where the houses are not partially burned. They're turned to white ash like a crematorium. But above all that, I saw the trees virtually untouched.
There were trees standing and the buildings gone. This system, this weather system, came in from the mountains, from the east. That does not happen. They were not telling people anything. They were not letting people in to help. What they're telling you in the news is not what happened.
And this is something similar that's been happening at Honolulu Bay this recent time, when we had the means to save and protect and prevent a catastrophe from happening. The public did, but our state and our federal government, like the Coast Guard, they denied us access to go and help. Now they're doing the same thing again at these roadblocks, denying people access to bring in supplies, just supplies for people to live. People want to leave. There are people here that want to leave, but they don't have gas to put in their car to leave. People are trying to bring gas in so that these people can just jump in their car and leave Lahaina. Take away the strain from the shelters, take away the strain from the food and water that they're taking from when they have a place that they can go to. Yet our state is still denying people access. People, I don't even know. I'm lost for words. I don't even know what to do.
So right there you have the failure of the state to help out. And it's actually causing more of a problem. There are some, and I'm not going to say whether I believe it or not, but there are some who are saying that the death toll will keep rising, but it will all be pushed under the, oh yeah, we just kept finding dead people from the fire. And nobody is going to question whether or not people died because of the lack of care in the aftermath of the fire. Whatever the cause, the state is failing.
And the Red Double Cross is confiscating all donations, storing it away, and not distributing to local people who need it. FEMA's not helping. There are literally riots breaking out amongst people trying to supply their families. Families who have homes still are housing up to 20 families. They don't have enough things. They need tents. They need everything. People are not giving out their personal information to anyone. And this is supported by another first-person testimony.
Now, if we take it a step further, the governor was asked, why didn't the system go off when the fires were happening? And he was basically saying it must have been a malfunction. But what's interesting is a person commented, the siren sounds went off when there was no tsunami, but the sound when an actual burning fire disaster, it doesn't occur. What's also interesting about the governor was he passed this executive order just before this in July, which could take away the land from the people based on if they need to rezone. There's also a lady who has mentioned how the Red Cross has had hundreds of millions of donations from all these celebrities, but they don't have any security and they're having to move the people out who have lost everything. So then we look at this lady's work and we can see that this looks like a land grab. If all of these politicians and celebrities really cared, why aren't they talking about this legislation? This legislation was something that was proposed on January 5th of 2023 of 51 acres in the same area of the fire would be turned into a housing project. Interesting. Now what's also interesting is this follows the Agenda 2030 plan as well. So we really have to ask, was this just what the media reported or something planned?
I'm already thinking about ways for the state to acquire that land so that we can put it into workforce housing.
You're gonna be okay, Milo.
Holy fuck.
Shit. Both sides, to the left and the right, are on fire. White smoke starting to come, which means the fire's starting to die out. Fucking scary.
Now, here's where I'm going to get into what I believe is going to be the solution, no matter what the cause, is going to be rebuild the infrastructure into affordable, smart housing. There's some brand new news that I won't get into, but it's about BlackRock basically moving all of its investments outside of the stock market, especially of the United States. As that's happening, you could see our US dollar starting to collapse just because our largest investment firm is moving all of its assets outside of the US dollar and outside of the US stock market. There are global markets for sure, so it's not a complete removal, but bear with me here. BlackRock is the #1 investor in what we call the public-private partnership, or Agenda 21, which turned to Agenda 2020 and then to Agenda 2030, and is also called the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Those are the goals to make into what are now cities, in some sense, level all of the infrastructure so the smart city can be built back. And the smart city is a device that you will live inside. Let's say you want to get rid of your phone because you know your data is being harvested and you know you're being spied on. It doesn't matter if you live inside a smart development city or if you live inside an affordable living smart home like BlackRock and Vanguard started building up after 2012 in the great financial crisis, because legislation changed for them to be able to buy up affordable housing for a future crisis, to be able to put people in this affordable housing. Which, what does that mean? You're living inside a device and now you can be locked out of your home by Amazon. And there's precedent for this. People getting locked out of outside of their houses by Amazon. Amazon locked somebody out of their house. That is a glimpse of the world that we are stepping into.
A lot of the cities where the major shops and units were burned down, where the Black Lives Matter organised riots basically looted entire areas, the exact redevelopment areas for the new developments of the banks. It was like an organised plan. Burn down these areas, loot the shops, and the laws were changed the year before to make them redevelopment areas, so they were tax-free, then the banks come in and bought it all. I was looking thinking, this is organised. This is like a building development programme. Black Lives Matter have been used as an organisation to come in and just, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but when I actually looked at it, I thought, oh my God. And out of the 19 cities where the major places were looted and burned, it's like 18 of them.
So, laws were changed in order to make these the development areas. Could it be the same way in Hawaii, where laws were changed in Maui right beforehand to allow for these regions that were burnt to become the next smart city development project? Because if they were, then that's kind of a smoking gun. If just last year it changed, this legislation changed, so now these are basically smart city development plan areas, well, what do you have to do first? A demolition project. But what if the people don't agree to your smart housing and your smart city development plan? Well, I'm sorry, a natural disaster just happened, and now you don't have a choice, and the insurance isn't going to cover it. You see how this can start looking more and more like a plot when people are saying, oh, get off your conspiracy high horse. These types of things happen. Yes, but can these things happen in a way that seem kind of suspicious to people that even live there? With a conventional story that it's just a wildfire, don't look any deeper than it, just a wildfire. But what about the suspicious? Don't be a conspiracy theorist. Nothing suspicious. It's just a wildfire. You don't think that any kind of problem like this can be created by the very people who want to turn everything into a sustainable development smart city so everything can be tracked and traced? Like what's happening in Ukraine? Because BlackRock said that they would rebuild Ukraine after it gets demolished.
According to the World Economic Forum website, as of May 2023, 36 countries worldwide will have smart city governance initiatives, surveillance monitoring, analysis, reporting technology. You'll have a digital ID that will track in real time your shopping, your entertainment, your activities, and your carbon footprint. You'll also have a 15-minute travel limit without a permit. A permit to travel. And if you exceed any of these things, you'll be denied access to daily activities. Obviously, no one would move into one of these cities voluntarily, but they don't have to, because the laws governing Agenda 2030 land development allows the government to cease polluted land and move their residents to these smart cities. If you're living somewhere where your land and water is poisoned, you don't get an option to opt out. Where has land and water been poisoned recently?
So let's wrap this all up. What can we conclude from what I've showed you today? It's very sparse information. It's hard to say. Yes, Agenda 21 seems to be happening in all these places that these disasters happen, but if you had something like a UN agenda to make all cities in the world smart cities, and anything happens in those cities, somebody who is only a conspiracy theorist would be like, well, obviously this is part of Agenda 21 and this is some kind of ulterior motive for them to get to build up the smart grid inside these cities. I woke up this morning ready to launch this episode, and I decided I'm going to film this ending one more time because I saw that in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic there had been an explosion. So the first thing I did was I went and I looked at all the sustainable development goals for Santo Domingo specifically, and then for Dominican Republic as a whole. There are sustainable development goals, and there have been there for quite some time. I don't know if you know much about Dominican Republic. It's connected to Haiti. Haiti is far lower on the income level, and their infrastructure is not that good. You would imagine this would have happened in Haiti. However, in cities, explosions do happen sometimes. Sometimes they're freak accidents. My spidey senses go off every single time, and I look into it. And of course, right there in Santo Domingo, there are Agenda 21 or Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 goals right there in Santo Domingo. It was a bakery that exploded, and I think it hit a laundromat and nearby places. It was right in the capital. But we don't know that this is definitely connected with some ulterior motive for Agenda 21. This is where my work really comes into play. I'm not here to make you believe one way or another when it comes to conspiracies. In fact, I believe that it's my role to help you, the audience, heal from the knee-jerk reaction that everything's got to be a conspiracy. It's to help you open up your mind so you're not having these knee-jerk reactions and your mind's not clouded by the bias of your past. That there's more than meets the eye. With that being said, I love you all, and I'll catch you all next time on the Deeper Dives.
I wanted to give you a feel of how fast the fire is going, so I moved to it. Please, if you have any footage of any fire anywhere on Maui, please post it in the comments below. So I'm compiling footage. Lots of footage is getting deleted. Pictures are getting deleted, and people don't really know the severity, which is really stupid. You can see here, it's moving probably about 1.5 to 3 miles an hour, somewhere in that ballpark, and it's heading kind of more toward the Monsanto area.
The fire is on Front Street and it is time to go! If anybody's still here, the fire is on Front Street and it is time to go! The safe way is the beach. Just stick to the water. Thank you. Alright, that's all I have to film video on this pier today.